have similar problems to the issues that Japan is facing, and also the other way around. We always wonder if the issues that Japan is facing could be somehow related to what we are facing in Mexico. And we have this proposal from United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goals. And as you know, in less than 10 years, we will be measuring whether we as a global society could reach those goals. So today we are comparing our work in Mexico from the former scholars, Mexican former scholars in Japan, and students from Meiji University. So I'm very happy to be also announcing the participation of JICA. So we will be hearing 3 experts in this side of the Pacific Ocean, and then we will be hearing several students from Meiji University, which is a university that has good ties with Mexico, thanks to Professor Tokoro's work. AMEJ is an association that gathers former scholars from several programs from the Ministry of Education, Science, Technology, and Sports from Japan. And that is why we always feel that we want to understand how the tools that we were given in Japan could be useful, not only for Mexico and not only for Japan, but also for us as a whole, as a global society. So many thanks for being here today, for being hearing us, for being sharing with us your thoughts, your concerns, and your research. I will be happy to hear you all.
Konnichiwa. Our first speaker of today's seminar is Mr. Francisco Javier Nicolás Félix. He studied international relations at National Autonomous University of Mexico, and currently he is officer in the Technical Cooperation Program in Disaster Risk Reduction. Nicolás Félix will talk about the main guidelines and policies of JICA in order to reach the SDGs in Mexico and international cooperation programs between Japan and our country.
Thank you very much, Uriel, and thank you very much for all the people who are attending this seminar. As I was presenting, my name is Francisco Nicolás, and today I would like to talk about the SDGs and the Japanese international cooperation, specifically the main guidelines that we are working not just in Mexico, but all over the world. So this presentation will touch 3 points, especially what are the SDGs, what is JICA, and what is JICA Global Agenda, and how it's linked to the SDGs and its accomplishment. Well, the SDGs are the 17 interrelated objectives designed to serve as a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future, and it's the main part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. As you know, we have passed the midterm, and 2015 was a really special year because not just the Sustainability Development Agenda was made, but also there are also some international guidelines that we should follow. For example, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, the Paris Agreement. There are many agendas related to development that not just international agencies, but also like local governments are following in order to create a better world. So what is JICA? What do we do? JICA is the Japan International Cooperation Agency. It's part of the Japanese government and is in charge of administering the Japanese official development assistance, and is one of the biggest donors or also agencies that gives aid to many countries and regions. Now we are in 139 regions and countries. We have 96 overseas offices, and in Japan, there are 14 local offices. And all over the world, we are 1,955 staff. But and also there are volunteers all around the world, and experts and also consultants working with us in order to create and execute not just technical cooperation, but also aid assistance and financial support. So in JICA, we have this, our motto is leading the world with trust. And we put a special emphasis into having a good relationship, not just with the governments, but also main stakeholders, our counterparts. And we have two main objectives, which are to follow and look forward for the human security. This means aiming for a society where all people can protect themselves from various threats and live their daily lives in security and with dignity. And also, we are looking for quality growth. We are aiming for promoting sustainable growth with less disparity and without harming the environment. And with these two main pillars of our organization, we have developed a special agenda linked to the SDGs that have like four main frameworks, if we could say that we like to call the 4 Ps. The 4 Ps are the short for people, peace, prosperity, and planet. So in these 4 frameworks, we are linking the SDGs, the 17 development goals, with our work all over the world. So we like to mobilize a wide range of resources to attack global issues, its goals and objectives, and contribute to the SDGs. So in these 4 frameworks, prosperity, people, peace, and planet, you can see that there are 5 sub agendas, and each agenda is willing to help not just a special country or a special region, but actually an international way to create development, to create resilience, and also to help have a better life. Focuses in those 2 things, which are the human security and also the growth of quality. So as I told, these 4 main pillars, which are prosperity, people, peace, and planet, have 5 internal agendas. And as you can see, each one, you are now displaying in your screens, helped to accomplish either one or many of the SDGs. So I would like to focus, for example, here, since we are in like an agriculture seminar, that actually the main, the point 5 of the prosperity is agriculture. And actually we like to focus on agriculture and rural development by eradicate poverty and hunger by achieving a sustainable agriculture. And I will tell you what are our 5 approaches for this. First is to the smallholder horticulture empowerment and promotion approach, which is called SHEP. Also promoting rice development in Africa. The third one is strengthening food value chain in Southeast Asia. The fourth is promoting the fisheries center blue economy in island countries. And the fifth, promoting One Health through strengthening livestock hygiene. Here in Mexico, we had a special scientific project in the north part of Mexico where we combine sustainable aquaculture techniques in desert zones in order to create a sustainable economy in local farms. So the last 2 pillars are peace and planet, and each one is also, as you can see, trying to contribute to the global agenda. Especially, I would like to focus on 2, which are disaster risk reduction through pre-disaster investment and build back better. As you know, there are many natural hazards all around the world, And sometimes the damage caused by these hazards tend to take back all the efforts into development. We can see like in Turkey's earthquake like 3 weeks ago. And we are really putting a lot of effort in not just have prevention, but actually to reduce the risks related to the disasters. And then after the disaster is sometimes collapse or the systems don't work very well, we are willing to help into build back better. And finally, a good and important thing that actually accomplished to all the SDG goals are digital development in order to improve the techniques, the capacities, and the quality of not just human resources, but also processes that can help to the societies. All our activities here in JICA are willing into these 20 objectives, which are really close linked to the SDGs, but especially we are aiming to create a social impact that can actually benefit the people from those countries and places when we are working. Well, so this is a small presentation, but I hope it can make a little bit of sense of what JICA is doing all around the world related to the SDGs. Thank you very much.
Meiji University was originally established in 1881. Since that time, university has continued for over 140 years as one of the Japan's leading private universities. Meiji University is a comprehensive institution with 10 undergraduate and 16 graduate schools, and it is located in the central Tokyo. This Institute of Japan is the most popular university. With Japan's declining birth rate, the number of people aged 18 years is now 1.10 million. But like every year, the number of applicants to Meiji University has exceeded 100,000. Professor Yasuhiro Tokoro is lecturer and scientist at Meiji University and has been conducting research on several themes concerning to Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, initiatives in Japan and elsewhere. Today's presentation is a result of research by two of these groups. The two groups have been involved in academic exchange activities with University of Guadalajara, UDG, in 2021. They organized a seminar with students and professors of the UDG, and the following people were present: Melba Priya, Ambassador of the Embassy of Mexico in Japan, and Katsumi Itagaki, General Consul in Japan in León. A grant from the Mexican and Japanese government friendship funds, Fideicomiso Fondo de la Amistad México-Japón, was entrusted with the budget to publish the results of this research. Subsequently, in October 2022, the book Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and Environmental Challenges and Perspectives Diversity jointly published the book. The two groups that will be presented today also has written papers. In the chapter 3, requirements to the sustainability of Japan's forest management, in chapter 6, sustainable fisheries and environmental conservation in Japan, the possibility of land-based aquaculture. In November 2022, the two groups presented their research and at a publication celebration at the Embassy of Mexico in Japan. The purpose of today's presentation is to share these results with our friends, muy amigos of AMEJ and JICA Mexico office. Students presenting in today's seminar belong to the second, third, and fourth years of university studies programs of Meiji University. This seminar is divided in two sections. In the first one, we'll be focused on sustainable fisheries and aquaculture environmental conservation, where the students, Mona Fujisawa, Yuito Miyake, Risa Hiramatsu, Nagi Goto, Naoto Amemiya, and Akari Kondo will present the research results. While in the second part of interventions, Kento Ohijima, Saya Ohimoto, Ayano Kakuda, Riko Okamoto, Mika Miyahara, and Sakura Saito will present the results regarding to the requirements of sustainability of Japan forest management. Please, Meiji University students, go ahead. The audience is yours.
Good morning and buenos dias, buenas noches, everyone. We are the fisheries team from Tokoro Seminar. We are very pleased to have this opportunity. And today we are here to talk about our study of fisheries. The table of contents is as follows. Let's move on to the contents. We began our research about the sustainability of the fisheries industry when we heard the news that fish habitats were moving northward. In the process, we discovered that the fisheries industry faced a variety of challenges. The two main problems currently facing Japanese fishery industries are: first, the catch is declining. Over the past 30 years, Japanese catch has dropped by half, while the global catch has doubled. Some type of fish, such as a sardine, decline rapidly. The figure on the right shows the catch of Japanese common squid by region, and as can be seen from the northward trend, it has become impossible to supply a stable catch year by year. Second, the number of fishermen is declining. Japan has seen a 60% decline in the number of people working in the fishery industry over the past 30 years due to the factors such as the declining birth rate and aging population. Thus, we can see that Japanese fisheries industry is in a remarkable state of decline. Therefore, we have deepened our research on the aquaculture industry, believing that it is necessary to secure production through aquaculture. Chapter 2 explains the need for aquaculture and its problem.
In fact, globally, the share of aquaculture in fishery industry is increasing. Although we mentioned earlier that global fish catches have been increasing, as this chart shows, natural fish catches have reached the limit since 1980 and have been supplemented by increasing in aquaculture. One of the reasons for this is a rapid increase in population due to the population explosion and the problem of hunger and the accompanying decline in natural resources. However, we found that production through aquaculture presents various challenges. First, environmental destruction. The location accessible to the economy sector have been converted to aquaculture lands. For example, beautiful mangrove forests are destroyed to make space for shrimp farms. Furthermore, dirty water from the farm is having a negative impact on the local residents. In addition, environmental destruction of cost due to aquaculture is causing problems. There are cases such as wastewater discharged from the farm causing plankton to grow abnormally. In other words, causing red tides. Finally, aquaculture has a risk of spread of various diseases since they raise tons of fish in limited space. We have become aware that aquaculture, which is already an indispensable part of the fishing industry, not only in Japan, but also around the world, is at risk of these problems.
We have so far explained the current situation of fishing industry in Japan and the issue of aquaculture. From now on, I would like to talk about land-based aquaculture as one of the solutions. We believe this method makes the Japanese fishery sustainable. So let's begin presentation from explaining the definition of land-based aquaculture. What is land-based aquaculture? This means culturing in an artificially created environment on land. Currently, it is implemented in two main types. The first one is running water system. This system draws water from rivers or seas and drains water contaminated with food or manure to outside them. Therefore, this system cannot be said to be environmentally friendly. The other one is a closed recirculating system. This method purifies and circulating the breathing water using a filtration system. Basically, it is said to be very environmentally friendly because it reuses sewage without draining it. Therefore, in recent years, the attention has been focused on the latter land-based aquaculture system. For this reason, we visited companies and researchers using the closed recirculating system to conduct field surveys. This is one of the examples of closed recirculating system in Japan. The name is FRD Japan Co. Limited. This company is a startup funded by the major trading company. FRD Japan adopts closed recirculating system. The main fish that are bred are trout salmon. They aim to increase their annual production volume from 30 tons to 2,000 tons by increasing our business scale. Next, Professor Yamamoto of Okayama University of Science is working on research focusing on water used in land-based aquaculture. It is called suitable environmental water, made with the minimum nutrients that fish need, which can be used in both sea and river fish.
There are several issues involved in commercializing land-based aquaculture. In this article, we will focus mainly on the cost aspect. The first is the problem electricity used to operate the facilities. Compared to existing fisheries, electricity consumption is many times higher. Generating vast amounts of electricity with fossil fuels, as in the past, is not desirable because of the heavy environmental impact. Many large land-based aquaculture operators have considered temporarily switching from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources that do not emit greenhouse gases in order to reduce costs and protect the environment. But none of them have been able to cover the amount of electricity they are using fossil fuels to provide. Replacing the entire electricity supply with renewable energy is unrealistic at this time. Other efforts to reduce electricity consumption are to farm fish in areas where the temperature is close to the water temperature. The intent is to reduce power consumption by reducing the range of temperature control. However, this approach may eliminate the advantage of land-based aquaculture, which is that aquaculture can be conducted anywhere. We have visited companies that can solve the above problem. From now, I introduce about Arc Incorporated, which is a small business venture in land-based aquaculture industry. Its biggest characteristic is providing a small-sized land-based aquaculture facility. The company usually targets the general company, so they are producing a moderate-scale facility. On the other hand, this company is working on developing a smaller aquaculture facility and targeting individual rather than general company, so that they try to increase the opportunity using it. That makes much more people possible to cultivate fish sustainably wherever you want. Here, this company's business aim or purpose gives seed by promoting land-based aquaculture, which doesn't affect badly to environment. Secondly, the mission says that increasing the opportunity using land-based aquaculture and making it democratized. Then their challenges are small size distributed into a platform and decentralized. Lastly, they said their targets are individual and general companies. I'll move on to about their business details. The facility they invented is 9.1990 square meters, as small as parking area surprisingly. And they use a system called Closed Aquaculture One, which is most popular. Also, it is automatic management of feed and water. Here is the actual facility. In terms of electricity supply, the facility is able to use only solar power generation, making it the most environmentally friendly facility possible. To summarize the first issue, large-scale aquaculture facilities have the problem of high running costs and limited location, while small-scale plants, although they have remarkable production efficiency, are lacking in terms of production volume. This is an area of concern for the operators, and they have stated that they must promote large-scale aquaculture as well, rather than trying to cover the production volume with small-scale plants. In other words, it will be necessary to strike a balance. In order to do so, financing will be necessary, starting with large-scale land-based aquaculture. This brings us to the second issue of financing, difficulty in raising funds. First, there is a lack of success stories worldwide, and it takes a long time to recover the cost, 50 years or more. Despite the many uncertainties, the combination of factors such as the time required for cost recovery can make it difficult to obtain financial support. In addition, the government is not actively providing assistance due to the current dependence on the existing fishing industry. These are some of the factors that make it difficult to raising funds. We believe that one way to overcome this situation is to establish a system of government subsidies. Increasing subsidies will shorten the time it takes to recover funds and increase the amount of private support. That's all I have to say, and I will leave it to Nagi to continue.
Okay, then how is it possible to solve the cost problem? There are some subsidy system provided by the Japanese Fishery Agency in order to promote market-oriented aquaculture industry. How much money they can give is based on the evaluation of business feasibility. But what is market orientation? In definition, they prioritize identifying the needs and desires of consumers and creating products and services that satisfy consumers. I will explain it more clearly with the structure of fishery industry. There are mainly 4 parts: administration, producers, companies, and consumers. We've been to Japanese Fishery Agency, Scratting, Maruhanichiro, ARC, and Tokyo Sango Corporation as our field research. Please look at this figure, and there is value chain and market. Market orientation should build between these two mainly. Companies analyze consumers' demand and communicate it to the value chain. The value chain then aligns production with demand. For example, change sales volume or sales method. Market orientation means that the demand comes first. Next, but how does the subsidy system function? I will focus on the relationship between administrations and producers. Here's an illustration I showed you earlier, also contracting the administration per circled in blue. Producers visualize their business plans and management status and submit them to the administration, which is Japanese Fishery Agency in this case. In response, the administration provides financial assistance. In cooperation with financial institution, it becomes possible to provide specialized financing for capital investment as needed. Now let's talk about benefits of this system. Earlier, one of the members have mentioned that the problem in the fisheries agency is a lack of communication among its stakeholders. This subsidy system solves that problem directly. As a result, it leads to business planning to be more strategic. They can meet the demand, and it makes it possible to make more profit. A mutual understanding between each stakeholders enables to make reference for funding. However, through our field research, there are so many voices heard that the high initial cost is still the major barrier for those engaged in land-based aquaculture. We can say that there is still a gap in perception of the current situation, depending on each position, which is producers and companies.
Then among these stakeholders, I will focus on the new issue happened in the relationship between administration and consumer. Firstly, I'm going to explain about what is MSC. MSC Marine Stewardship Council certification is a way of showing that a fishery meets international best practice for sustainable fishing. MSC itself is a global nonprofit organization, and they have two kinds of aims: that preventing overfishing and protecting sea environment. Working with scientists, fisheries, industry experts, and other nonprofits. The MSC's goal is to improve the way our ocean is fished through the MSC fisheries standard and chain of custody standard. Fish and seafood from certified fisheries can carry the blue MSC label, and it enables customers to notice that what they're buying is sustainable. In fact, through the interview we did last year toward Maruhanichiro Corporation from Japan, we found there is a low sense of MSC recognition in Japan as an issue. In comparison with 58% in Germany, 57% in Switzerland, 25% in Canada, it was recorded as only 90% in Japan. Next, why do we need to make sense of MSC certification recognition higher? From now on, I will talk about negative effects can be considered they've actually happened. In fact, for gaining certification, it will cost a lot. According to one example, which is Japanese company got certified, they say it was $70,000 to get the certification. Spending high cost to get certified will lead market prices up naturally. Moreover, if there is a low sense of recognition and many people don't understand its worth, it will be hard to make consumers have buying motivation. And profits the company receives will be low, and eventually a number of companies would like to agree with these sustainable activities will remain low. However, it can be thought conversely that if consumers can understand its worth, if you can add value with MSC certification itself, these problems can be solved. I think it needs cooperation from both stakeholders, not only the administration, but also consumers. As a current status, since now some companies and administration approach to customers to make a MSC sense of recognition higher. For instance, appointing celebrities and well-known people as advertising MSC certification, like the photo on the right. Also, Maruhanichiro is one of the largest fishery aquaculture and food processing companies in the world that implemented cooking events, which invited family and cooked using MSC certified fish to increase the sense of MSC certification. However, it still needs other approaches from both stakeholders. To solve these problems, as I said before, both stakeholders should make effort from now on. Firstly, from administration, they should install ethical education more into compulsory education. In Japan, in comparison with other countries, especially Europe, it is considered not enough to think environmentally friendly thought yet. It is necessary to implement ethical education for children, I think. If you receive ethical education when you're young, it enables your awareness for environmental conservation make less, and it can transfer from only recognition to actual activity. Also, I believe they should make fishery scorecard, referring to existed chocolate scorecard. While the chocolate scorecard is a ranking made by evaluating social and environmental effects of 36 chocolate corporations in the world by the Chocolate Collective, which is consisted by 29 committees. This system gives positive effects that not only making consumers to get to know which company contribute to society, and they can know what is an environmentally friendly activity, MSC certification if it could be used for fishery industry, but also making administration feel a sense of danger for creating sustainable society by observation of consumers. Therefore, I believe this will be a good solution for each stakeholders. Finally, for research, we'd like to carry on enlightenment consumer awareness mainly. For example, by using social media and making events with company in fishery industry. We think we'll split out and knowledge.
So far, research has shown that the biggest problem with land-based aquaculture is the cost. Also, there are too many problems and challenges to achieve a completely sustainable fishery industry. And we think we should adopt a method of implementation that considers how sustainable we can be, rather than relying entirely on aquaculture, environmental protection, and cost. In order to protect Japan's fisheries industry, each stakeholder should cooperate to fulfill their respective roles fittingly. Therefore, we should have a common understanding of the current situation, problems, issues, and objectives. These are our presentation, and these are the references. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. If anybody has any question, please feel free to write it in the Q&A. We will address them at the end. So next, I want to introduce you to Professor Rodriguez Estrada. He graduated from Veracruz University. He has been JICA Mombukaga Scholar. He studied his master's in science and PhD on aquaculture nutrition at Tokyo University of Marine Science and Technology. Currently, he is a research scientist for CONACYT, National Council of Science and Technology of Mexican Federal Government. In this position, he is commissioned to Juarez Autonomous University, Academic Division of Biological Sciences, Laboratory of Physiology of Aquatic Resources. Additionally, he is member of our association, AMEJ. Adelante, Uriel.
Can you see my screen?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. 今日はウリエル・ロドリゲスと申します。これから DPSIR や SDGs について発表します。よろしくお願いします。This presentation is based in our more recent studies. In today's seminar, I will talk about the DPSIR as an initial step tool for diagnosing current state of fisheries of a natural resource exploitation in order to reach Sustainable Development Goal, SDG, of fisheries and aquaculture. In this seminar, I will also talk about what we are doing to achieve this purpose in our research team. Present talk has been divided in 3 parts. The first one, I will present the DPSIR analysis as a diagnosis tool of the actual state of an aquaculture case study, highlighting that this kind of analysis implies the initial step for reaching sustainability and eventually SDG 14. In order to deeply understand this, in the second part, I will give an overview regarding to the current state of fisheries and aquaculture in Mexico, including production, potential, challenges, and opportunities that altogether will lead to achieve the SDG 14. And finally, key aspects of the progress of SDG 14 in national territory will be provided. In order to achieve the SDGs, the first step is to understand the current state of our target natural resource exploitation, including impacts, drivers, strengths, weakness, and areas of opportunities. To illustrate this, from now on, I will talk about our most recent study where I was author for the Mexican team, published in 2021 by United Nations Environment Program and International Resource Panel, which is product of an international effort of a team led by Drs. Fletcher, Alvarez, Liu, and McOwen, and a highly specialized team of collaborators from Asia, Europe, and Mexico. This investigation was related to human land-based activities in coastal regions. For this purpose, we use drivers, pressures, state, impact, and response, DPSIR framework, in order to assess how global scale drivers are pushing the development of land-based activities, which in turn will affect the quality and availability of coastal resources. DPSIR is considered as the first step for diagnosing the target natural resource exploitation in order to determine the best strategy for solving its main constraints by incorporating sustainable development, therefore achieving the SDGs. In the Chapter 7 of Governing Coastal Resources Implications for a Sustainable Blue Economy, our technical paper, we present the aquaculture case study, where we choose the two most representative species culture worldwide, belonging to two extremely different environments, cold water and warm water. Atlantic salmon, Salmosalar, was selected for the first one, while 3 species of shrimps for the second one. Because shrimp is the most important aquaculture product in Mexico, this section of my talk of today's seminar is focused in this species. For the purpose of my talk, we prepare an study preparing an extensive review of scientific papers and great literature, around 400 documents related to the impact of shrimp aquaculture, including the following impacts: physical, chemical, and biological. Additionally, we also included those impacts produced by fish production related activities. In order to understand the impacts of shrimp farming in coastal environment, an assessment was conducted using the DPSIR analysis, from which we built matrices in order to answer 4 specific questions that were related to impacts, stressors, and dependency. Based on our results, we concluded that the current farming methods used worldwide lead to severe environment impacts to marine ecosystem. From the governance point of view, worldwide, regulations are very limited, mainly in developing countries. Therefore, this activity is still far from being sustainable in some countries, while in others is highly developed. After being talked about the DPSIR analysis as a tool for diagnosing impacts of land-based aquaculture, and in order to understand more the process for achieving the SDGs, we will be focusing on something else more specific to my country, the current state of fisheries and aquaculture in Mexico. To this regard, in 2022, Vázquez Vera and Chávez Carreño reported that currently aquatic resources exploitation in Mexico is composed by 56,000 people operating 9,320 units, which are distributed along national territory. Nowadays, the main species culture are shrimp, tilapia, trout, oyster, tuna, catfish, and carp. Between 2005 and 2018, aquaculture contributed in average with a 12% of annual production, combining fisheries and aquaculture, implying 36,000 million of Mexican pesos per year. According to CONAPESCA, National Council of Aquaculture and Fisheries of Mexican federal government, farm aquatic species are cultured under the following sort of well-known systems: extensive, intensive, and semi-intensive systems, being the last one the most widely used in Mexico in either number of aquaculture units or occupied area. According to FAO datasheet and aquaculture production statistics and OECD datasheet, in 2018, Mexico produced 1.7 million tons of fish, including mollusks and crustaceans, with a value of $2,799.7 million US, from which 29% of this value came from aquaculture and 71% from fisheries. Between 2008 and 2018, the quantity produced increased by 5%, while its value increased by 85%. In Mexico, the challenges of fisheries of aquaculture are mainly defined by the following factors, including bureaucracy, which complexity, difficult legal procedures derive from administration of production units. Sovereignty, that urge the stimulation for consuming national products. Governance, which needs to be developed in order to make aquaculture and fisheries-related activities available for everyone. Science access, that is fundamental for the reinforcement of these economical activities and requires an intense work of research and development between industry and academy. And finally, climate change and COVID-19 that are affecting all over the world. Although aquaculture has been widely developed along national territory, production and research has been mainly concentrated in northern states and those located in the Pacific, while South and Southeast states still have a promising development. In contrast to this, and to this regard, Southeast of Mexico, the most economically vulnerable but mega biodiverse region, represents a universe of opportunities for aquaculture development. South of Mexico is considered as the most naturally rich region in our country, regarding not only to flora and fauna, but also to weather conditions, soil, and water availability. In this tropical region of our country exists a considerable potential for aquaculture development of both traditional species, such as tilapia and shrimp, and development of native species with a high potential to be exploited. In this regard, in our research team at Juárez Autónomo University of Tabasco, Laboratory of Physiology of Aquatic Resources, during the last 2 decades, we have been working with development of different biotechnologies for the culture of native species, such as tropical gar, bay snook, and Mayan cichlid, among others. Additionally, we have been working with the development of diets with the replacement of traditional meals like fish meal and soybean meal by alternative and novel ingredients such as insect meals. With our studies, we are seeking to contribute for the diversification of traditional aquaculture species and for the development of a more sustainable aquaculture in the southeast of Mexico. Although we know that our achievements still have a long way to go, we have the steady belief that our efforts will contribute partially to reach the SDGs 14 in our country. After being seen the DPSIR analysis, the current state of fisheries and aquaculture in Mexico, and what we are doing to reach sustainability of aquatic resources exploitation, let's see what is the progress of SDG 14 in Mexico. According to FAO Strategic Framework 2022-2031, aquaculture activity in Mexico complies with the high impact level of the following goals: zero hunger, employment and economy, responsible production and consumption, and submarine life. Although all of these goals are acceptably impacting the Mexican aquaculture activities, still have a long way to go in order to completely accomplish them by 2030. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Uriel. Now we will go to the second group, which will talk about requirements to the sustainability of Japan's forest management. お願いします。
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. We're the forestry team from Tokoro Seminar, of the Meiji University. I'm Saya.
And I'm Kento.
I'm Aeno.
And Mika, who is absent today, and
I'm Riko.
I'm Sakura.
thank you. Before starting our presentation, thank you for giving us such a precious opportunity to participate this seminar. Today, we're going to have a presentation on requirements for sustainable forestry management, and by focusing on both Japanese forestry and German forestry. This is today's agenda. In section 2, we mainly talk about various aspects of Japanese forestry. And in section 3 is about what we learned from interview we had with Mr. Ikeda, who is an expert of forestry living in Germany. So let us start. Section 1 is introduction. First, do you know the origin of the word sustainable forestry management? This word is based on the contents of forest principles agreed in UNCED in 1992, held in Rio de Janeiro. This word aims to maintain the health of forest ecosystems and make effective use of forests for human. In other words, coexistence of forest and human while keeping the balance of these three elements: ecology, economy, and social culture. Then let's move on to the next section. In this section, we'd like to talk about Japanese forestry from various aspects. And the first is about current situation. Look at this chart. In Japan, forest area accounts for approximately 70% of the total area. This ratio is the third in the world ranking of forest rate.
Next, I will discuss forest stock in Japan. Looking at the history of Japan's forestry industry, we can see that the area of forest in Japan has changed little since the 1960s. The ratio of natural forest to artificial forest has remained stable and unchanged over the past 60 years. The graph on the right side shows a transition of forest stock. The amount of artificial forest is increasing while that of natural forest is not. The Japanese forestry industry is characterized as small-scale management. It's mainly family-run businesses. The challenge for small-scale forestry operation is that it is difficult to make a profit. People who work in this field get low income. This is due to the high cost of logging and forest road maintenance, as well as the fact that these operations are unable to generate profits due to their low production volume. These factors may be caused by the small scale of Japan's forestry industry. Please look at the graphs. These graphs indicate the change in the number of family forestry businesses and forestry workers, and both of the numbers are decreasing. This is due to the relatively low wages, the hazardous nature of the work, and the fact that young forestry workers are moving to urban centers. In other words, Japan has a large forest stock, but there is a shortage of workers. Next, I will discuss history. During World War II, demand increased for timber in Japan, which is needed as a raw material for the manufacture of weapons. As Japan entered a period of rapid economic growth after the war, more wood was needed to rebuild war-torn cities. However, too many trees were cut down in excess of what was needed, which led to the devastation of forests. Therefore, starting in the 1950s, the government began to take up the lead in actively planting trees by hand. Then degraded natural forests changed into artificial forests. In addition, gradually more cheaply priced lumber began to be imported from overseas, and an energy revolution also took place. This energy revolution was a shift in global demand for raw materials for energy from charcoal to natural gas and petroleum. So the demand for timber dropped sharply, and the large amount of planted forests remained untouched. Even today, more than half of the planted forests are past the point where they would normally be harvested. As a result, there are many forests remaining in Japan that are ready for use.
In recent years, new systems for forest management have been introduced in Japan. One example of it is the Forest Management Law. This is a system that allows private companies who are different from the owners of the forest to manage and administer the forest. The picture shows how the system works. First, the local government confirms intention of the owners of forests. Next, the government is entrusted by the owners of forests and entrusts private forests to companies. These companies manage the forests. As you can see, the local government mediates the owners of forests and private companies. The aim of this system is to create well-maintained forests by allowing those who wish to manage the forest to do so.
Japanese forestry is facing a lot of difficulties. I'm going to introduce 3 examples. They are difficult to make a profit, aging population of forestry workers, and reduction of forestry workers. The Japanese government does some programs for the problem. For instance, making laws to deepen the connection between the government, forest owners, and managers, and systems that include the voice of forest owners. However, there are still some issues that need to be improved. It is not the government that has the largest investment and workload, but municipalities that own the forest. Funds collected through the Forest Environment Tax are not being used effectively and without rate because the use of the fund is unclear.
As we mentioned in the last slide, Japanese forestry is facing many problems, and all the issues are intricately related to each other. So we organize them by focusing on one issue and make it as a shaft of all the issues. This time, we focus on declining of labor force in forestry. We think this the most serious problem as taken into account that Japanese society is now rapidly aging. And this issue can be divided into 2 factors. People who were originally forestry workers leaving forestry, and the other is fewer people aiming to be forestry workers. And it can be said that these factors also can be the factors of aging forestry workers. These 2 factors have some common causes, for example, unprofitable or high risk of work, and so on. And Japanese Forestry Agency is implementing the new attempts for each called, first one is Midori no Hitozukuri in Japanese. Literal translation is development of green people, and Midori no Koyo in Japanese, and literal translation is green employment. The former attempt aims to provide benefit to secure and train new people to work in forestry and to disseminate information such as smart forestry to raise interest in forestry, and to train engineers who can provide guidance. And the latter attempt, a part of Midori no Hitozukuri, aims to prepare the environment for newcomers in many ways so that they can easily start to take part of forestry, and this helps to reduce the percentage of the people leaving forestry. Look at this chart that indicates effectiveness of the policies. The vertical axis represents the number of people, and the horizontal axis represents the year. The green part shows the trend of increased number of people who newly joined to forestry thanks to Midori no Koyo, which I introduced in the last slide. And this graph shows the changes in the number of forestry workers in various age groups and the changes in the number of workers in all industries. Same as in the previous graph, the vertical axis represents the number of people and the horizontal axis represents the year. Please notice the red line with diamond sharp dot in this chart. It shows the transition of the number of the young people. We can read from this graph the trend of increasing, so we assume that the policy is quite effective.
From here, I'd like to talk about origin of forest union. Forest union is a group of people who own forest areas and learn about how to maintain their forest in an efficient way. It was created in the 1880s. At the time, the purpose of forest union was to restrict overcutting, protect forests, prevent forest fires, and so on. But it has changed through several revisions. Currently, Forest Union is operated under the Forest Union Law. Its purposes are to develop the national economy through the improvement of economic and social status of its members, conservation and cultivation of forests, and enhancement of forest productivity. From this, it can be said that while it focuses on the conservation of forests in the past, now it aims to promote the marketing share of trees as one of the industries.
This page compares the past and present of Forest Union. The original purpose of Forest Union was to limit overharvesting in private forests and to protect forests. The current objectives are to promote the development of cooperative organization of forest owners and to improve the economic and social status of forest owners. The difference is that there is economic support for forest owners. In the past, Forest Union functioned as organizations that faithfully implemented the forestry policies of the government. Therefore, they didn't support the management activities of forest owners. The current reality is similar that forest conservation activities are the main focus and they don't support the economic independence of small-scale businesses. The reason is that they are reluctant to support economic independence because their main focus is to implement government policies and receive subsidies.
Although the forest union plays a big role in the Japanese forestry, there are also other ways that forest owners manage forests successfully. One example of independent management is self-logging forestry. This is a method that does not cut down all the trees at once, but rather decides which trees to leave in the future and cut down other trees to make it easier for those trees to grow. This leads to growing high-quality timber in a sustainable manner. One of the characteristics of self-logging forestry is the ability to keep expenses associated with forest management low. The reason for this is because the owner of the forest will cut and transport the trees by themselves. There will be no need of additional payment. And another feature is that the timing of harvesting can be determined according to the type of tree, so only trees that can be shipped in optimum condition can be selected for harvesting. These features make it possible to sell trees of good quality at a fair price.
I'd like to describe two issues that forestry union should address in the future. The first is that it interferes with forest management by its members. Self-supporting forestry activities described area promotes the free economic activities of forest owners, which is at always the policy of forest union. It's important for forest union to find a way to balance the economic activities of forest owners with the conservation of forests. The second is heterogeneity with the association. Differences in the area of forests owned by members of the association hinder the association from uniting into a single opinion. It's important to find ways to overcome the differences in issues and demands of forest owners. I will explain the future prospects for forest union in light of their current status. Forest union function as unions that faithfully implement government policies. This is because they can secure subsidies from the government and don't have to make efforts towards the economic independence of their members. Therefore, they are expected to address the economic issues of small forest owners in the future. This is because meeting The needs of members, as other unions do, will promote the industrial independence of the forestry industry. Ultimately, however, it's important to balance forest conservation with economic support for members. Encouraging only free competition may lead to excessive logging. It's necessary to strike a balance between forest conservation and economic independence so that the forestry industry can develop in the future while making the most of subsidies.
Okay, let's move on to the section 3, what we learned from interview. Before talking about the contents of the interview, I'd like to mention how the interview started. The interviewer is Mr. Ikeda, who majors in forest environmental science and now contributes to broad activities related to forest. Since Japanese forestry have a history of following German forestry for a while, we looked for someone who is familiar with German forestry. We reached Mr. Ikeda and decided to interview with him. First, I'd like to talk about how Germany people capture forest and forestry. In Germany, the word forest have a lot of functions. I showed a part of them here as such as being economic resources, giving people recreation and relaxation, disaster prevention, and so on. We can say that Germany people recognizes various functions of forests like this and coexist with them by taking measures focusing on sustainability.
In this chart, we compared forest situation in Germany to Japan. Forest area in Japan is larger than Germany, but when we look at wood production, Germany produces bigger amount of wood than that of Japan, and it may be affected by a number of workers. It's clear that forestry workers in Japan is small and need to get more people to capture it. Germany's forestry industry is more advanced than Japan's, and many of its efforts can be applied in Japan. In this page, I will explain how Germany first developed laws to enhance the multifunctional rule of forests. It will show how these laws are functioning in Japan. A maintained forest law is a law that consists of a wide path for trucks to carry out cut wood and a narrow path used for felling trees. Germany was able to achieve forestry by first establishing high-quality roads that suit the forest environment. There are two reasons for building such forest main roads for forestry. First, it will make work more efficient and ensure safety. The roads will make it easier to move through the forest and allow for regular logging and thinning. Second, roads play an important role in connecting forest and citizens. As a result, people can actively use forests to relax. This will provide a recreational function that provides natural healing. The roads shown on the previous slide have already been introduced in Hokkaido. The roads are called Shinkansen. They are named after Japan's high-speed rail. The Shinkansen is a prime example of a high-performance infrastructure. Maintained forest laws will increase the productivity of the forestry industry. The difference between Japan and Germany is that Japanese mountains slope steeply and are prone to collapse. Therefore, they have devices ways to adapt to the amount of rainfall. Specifically, water dissolved in the soil is dispersed and the soil on the scraped slope is held down and hardened to create a solid ground. Thanks to these efforts, the road was able to withstand the harsh weather conditions of Hokkaido even after being used.
Wait a second, please.
Okay,
Sorry.
Next slide, please. Okay, next I'll talk about the relationship between the forest and citizens. After interviewing Mr. Ikeda and reading his book Diversity, we understood that people in Germany have a close relationship with forests. German people consider forests to be an extension of their daily living space, and they engage in activities such as walking and cycling in the forest. As the Japanese have the word shinrin-yoku, which the literal translation would be forest bathing, forests have a relaxing effect. German people recognize forests as a common property of the entire society and are influenced positively by them on a daily basis. As we explained before, one factor that enables many people to enter the forest is that there are paved paths. And in Japan, there are forest therapy bases in forests where walking trails are provided for people to enjoy the surrounding nature. However, there are only 65 certified forest therapy bases in Japan. And Japan has many forests, but they are not being used effectively. In order for people in Japan to have a closer relationship with forests, Mr. Ikeda points out that it is important to utilize planted forests and satoyama, which is an environment where people and nature coexist in harmony. He states that forests close to residential areas will serve as daily living spaces, and people in Japan can feel as close to forests as they do in Germany.
In Germany, there is an occupation called forester. Their roles are varied, making a cultivation plan for the national forest, supervision during logging, provide free advice to private forest owners, and help logging and selling are local. Being forest officers in the forest, it means they are also responsible for protecting the forest by monitoring and taking action when damaged by harmful insects or disasters occur in the forest, and monitoring forest laws for public chemicals and garbage dumping to ensure that no one violates the rule regarding forests in Germany. Next slide, please. In Japan, foresters are not well known because there are no occupations such as forester in Germany. However, in Europe, there is an education system to become a forester, and foresters are very close to lieutenants. I heard that to be a forester is highly competitive as to be a doctor. That is why forester is a popular occupation in Europe. Japanese forestry is facing a lot of problems, and today we focus on declaring of labor force in forestry, which we consider that is the most serious problem. From the interview, we realized German people are more close to the forest and they have developed mechanisms. Japanese forestry should get out of the recent situation. Learning from Germany, Japan should recognize various functions of forests, make the most of forests to increase efficiency, protect and coexist with forests, and forests can survive sustainably as long as possible while benefit people. We consider this is important for sustainable forestry management. These are references. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for your presentations. we appreciate your participation in this seminar. And from now on, I would like to ask to the audience if you have any question, suggestion, or comment regarding to.
There is a question in the Q&A from Melina Avila. She says, could you talk about artificial forests? If anybody of the forestry group is it possible if you can talk about artificial forest?
Thank you for the question. Well, how can I answer to the question, like the origin of artificial forest, or so how can we answer? Like in Japan, the artificial forest is the most of the forests are artificial forests because as we mentioned in the presentation, we have history that once sorry, my English is not so clear, but once we have a history that once the demand for forestry is increased, so that's why artificial forestry is most part of our forestry in Japan. But the problem is that the Japanese forestry is difficulty to utilize more effectively. So that's the most how to say, that's the problem. We think that is the most problem, I think. So I don't think it's clear answer for the question. I'm sorry, but yeah, that's the answer I can do right now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a comment question for the sustainable, efficient use of forestry. So I would like to mention that the same as in Japan, the massive use of forestry resource started in the last century in Mexico. However, the main difference between Mexico and Japan is that in my country, the population that depends on the forestry is not experimenting a rapid aging process. However, the main problem of my country, of Mexico, is extreme poverty, and maybe the education of 13 sectors of the society that promote the deforestation of natural resources. One example of this is the enormous crisis experimenting in the national park belonging to Orizaba Peak, the highest volcano in Mexico. As a consequence, a yearly crisis of massive fires is being experimented in the region. It's a very big problem for this national park. My question is, what lessons from Japan do you think the Mexican authorities can learn in order to stop this ecological crisis of deforestation and massive fires? I don't know if someone from the forestry team can answer or make a comment.
Your audio is a little bit difficult. I don't know if you could get the question.
I'm afraid, but could you say that the question again?
Okay.
Maybe the last part, like
Yeah.
from the authorities, I think.
What lessons from Japan do you think Mexican authorities can learn in order to stop this ecological crisis of deforestation and massive fires?
Like you mean from the problem Japanese forestry have, is it possible to utilize how to capture the problems, how we capture the problems to the situation in Mexico that is happening devastation? Is that your question, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
How can we, the Mexicans or the Mexican authorities or the Mexican government do in order to reduce or to stop the deforestation that is happening in the national park Pico de Orizaba, in general, in all over the country?
Yeah, thank you. I think the situation is different from country to country, so I don't think there is one simple common way to solve the problem. But I think you can use the way how to see the problem. So as we said in the presentation, Japanese has problem, and we explained how we should capture the problem with a hint of German forestry. So I think the way how to see the problem and how to solve the problems can utilize for other countries. I don't think it's a clear answer to your question, but I think, yeah, that's the answer.
Thank you.
I think we don't have any questions coming.
Can I make another comment in question regarding to the sustainable aquaculture?
Please go ahead.
Okay. So, as many people from the audience know, I live in Japan for several years, studying my master and PhD in fisheries and aquaculture at Tokyo University of Marine Science and Technology. And I know that Japan has historically mastered the aquaculture species in order to make a sustainable activity, right? The main drawback of Japan, it is its small national territory that reduce the possibility for the expansion and to supply the aquatic food activities for the national population, I mean for the Japanese. Since many years ago, Japanese government has been concerned with these drawbacks. Therefore, other alternatives for culturing organisms have been taken by the Japanese government. One of these alternatives are those related to the establishment of projects like research and development, applied aquaculture, and even pioneering Japanese aquaculture companies mainly in Southeast of Asia. Looking to the natural business of Mexico, what kind of cooperation projects between Japan and Mexico are suitable for being applied in order to expand Japanese technologies in aquaculture in my country? So I mean that not only looking at the Southeast of Asia market, but also to the Latin American market, and for example, in Mexico. Do you think Japan think that this possibility is feasible? Is possible?
Yes, sorry, the sound sometimes cut off, so I can't hear clearly. So could you tell me again the question?
Okay, my question is, historically, Japan has been looking looking at the Southeast of Asia in order to for research and development projects, to establish Japanese companies in those countries in the Southeast of Asia. But what about the possibility or the potential to look at Latin American market? So I mean, for establishing Japanese companies in countries like Mexico, taking into account that Mexico has a rich, big biodiversity, the weather, the soil, the water availability. Do you think Japan is can evaluate the possibilities to establish Japanese companies dedicated to aquaculture in Mexico?
Okay. Maybe I think Japanese aquaculture industry and some related company are will be led the world. Maybe I think there are some problems like cost or operations. On the other hand, their possibilities or their motivation for the sustainability for fishery industry is so high. So we can tell our technology or something teach for Mexico or some developing country, I think.
Thank you.